Our story today begins far from the cities of kings, far from towers or stone gates, in a land made of dry valleys and windswept hills, where the earth is pale as sand and the sky is a stretch of soft blue emptiness. In this hushed land of silence and sunlight there is a village so small that some say the wind forgets to stop there. No river runs through it, no great trees grow tall above it. But the village is still and gentle, and full of stories that hum like bees beneath the floorboards. Houses are made of sun-baked clay, soft brown walls with faded blue shutters. Their roofs curve like old hats, and in the quietest corner of this village, there lives a girl named Anwan Nanawan, is small for her age, quiet as a dandelion seed, and she walks with the kind of stillness that makes birds trust her footsteps. She lives alone with her grandmother in a crooked little house at the edge of the hill. And every morning, as the sun folds gently over the far-off dunes, Anwan goes to the ledge behind their home, where the sky seems to bend low as if it's listening. There, lined in a perfect row, are dozens and dozens of tiny glass bottles, clear as truth, soft around the edges, each one sealed carefully with wax and string, and each one holds only a single drop of rain. You see, rain almost never comes to this village, maybe once a year or twice if the wind is kind. And when it does, it drifts down as though the clouds are sighing, soft, reluctant, sleepy. But Anwan waits for it with still hands and open eyes. She keeps her bottles clean, wrapped in wool when it gets too cold, dusted with lavender stems when the wind brings sand, and the villagers whisper, as villagers always do. They say she's strange, or quiet, or gifted, depending on who is telling the tale. But they all agree on one thing: Anwan's rain is not ordinary. Old Marta, the baker, who's made bread since the king's grandfather was a boy, once said that when she held one of Anwan's bottles, it whispered her mother's lullaby back to her, even though her mother passed long ago. And Elric the woodcutter, a man of heavy boots and calloused hands, said he heard the sound of the sea when he uncorked a drop. Even though he's never left the hills, they say, Anwan's rain remembers. They say each drop holds a story. Anwan doesn't argue, nor does she explain. She just smiles, that soft sort of smile, like a candle too shy to flicker, because she knows what's inside them. You see, Anwan hears things others do not with her ears exactly, but with something else, something quieter than thought. When the rain begins to fall, even if it's only for a minute, even if it's just a breath of water, she runs to her ledge, lays out the bottles like little hopes, and waits. Sometimes the drops fall straight into them. Sometimes she catches them in her palms and pours them in like promises, and when she holds them later in the hush of her room, she listens, not with ears, but with memory and dream, and each drop, each delicate drop, tells her a story. Some are short: a woman brushing her hair before a storm, a boy hiding a carved toy in the roots of a tree, a knight who weeps beside his horse in the forest, all caught in that moment the rain touched. The mothers are long: a mother lighting a candle in a stone chapel each year on her daughter's birthday, a traveler who never returns, a lullaby sung beside a cradle carved with ivy leaves. She hears them, all of them, one by one, and when she's sure the story is fully told, she wraps the bottle in linen and places it on the shelf. Her grandmother knows, though she's never said so directly. She simply sips her tea and knits, and sometimes leaves out extra wool for bottle wraps. One evening, just as the wind was curling sleepily across the rooftops, Anwan felt something, not with her hands or her skin, but in her chest, a kind of hush that presses gently against the ribs. She stood and went outside to the ledge. The sky was clear, no cloud in sight, no scent of rain, but she brought a bottle anyway. Was shaped differently than the others, rounded near the base, tapered like a teardrop, and slightly tinted a soft shade of violet. She'd been saving it for something she hadn't yet named. She placed it on the ledge, tied it with a string, and whispered a few quiet words, the kind that have no sound, only intention. Then she waited. The night passed, the moon rose, the owl sang, and no rain came. But in the morning there it was, a single drop, clinging to the inside of the bottle. As If it had always belonged there, and when's breath slowed, she lifted the bottle, held it to the light, watched the drop glisten, and swore for just a moment. She saw a shadow move inside it that night. She didn't uncork it. She lit a candle, wrapped the bottle in lamb's wool, and set it beside her bed. She didn't sleep. She listened, and slowly, like mist rising from a forgotten lake, the story began to come. It wasn't like the others. It didn't begin with footsteps or faces. It began with a voice. Soft, wavering voice, like someone remembering a song they hadn't sung in years. And it said, "I am the last rain of the last dream. My fell not from a cloud, but from a wish, and I carry a memory that has not yet happened at on one. Didn't move, didn't breathe." The voice was inside her head, but it wasn't hers. Spoke slowly, like a thread being drawn through velvet, and the story it told was this: there will come a day when the rain forgets how to fall, when even the sky goes silent and the earth grows too tired to ask. But in that silence, a girl will remember. She will carry the last drop in a violet bottle, and with it she will tell the sky a story so beautiful that it will weep. Once Maronwyn closed her eyes, she could see it, a dry world, empty wells, cracked stone, but in the center of it, a girl holding up a single bottle, as if it were a lantern or a heart. And the story she told would be this one, the one you are hearing now, because all stories, even the ones wrapped in rain, begin and end in the same place, with a listener, a heart, and a Hashanwan opened her eyes. The bottle was still there. The drop still glistened, but the voice had faded. Outside, the wind was rising, and, far away beyond the hills, the sky began to shift just a little, just enough to promise rain. Dear friend, let the breath soften again. Let the weight of your day drift from your shoulders. You are safe here. You are warm. You are welcome in this story. The hearth still flickers softly. Wind carries the scent of lavender through half-shuttered windows, and your heart moves with the rhythm of quiet dreams. So gently, so slowly, we return now to our tale. The wind came like a sigh, not loud, not sudden, but steady, like the breath of something waking after a long rest. Anwyn stood at the edge of the hill, bottle in hand, eyes tilted to the shifting sky. It had been a long time since the clouds had gathered this way, not as a storm, but as a slow blooming petal by petal across the horizon. She did not speak. She only waited, and the wind curled around her, brushed her cheeks, tugged at the hem of her sleeve, and seemed to carry something half remembered. Something old. Down in the village, doors opened, heads tilted, voices rose in wonder, and murmured hope. Rain, perhaps rain was coming. When turned slowly, carried her bottle back inside, and placed it among the others, all wrapped in linen and string each, with a memory sealed like a breath caught between words. But the violet bottle she left uncovered, lit by the glow of a single beeswax candle. The drop inside shimmered softly like a star behind glass. That night she dreamed, but it was not a dream like others. It was vast, colorless, like standing inside a mist that remembers voices but not faces. She saw a tower far away, rising like a fingertip toward the clouds. It was made of glass, not stone, and each pane shimmered with rain trapped in its own memories. Sighed. She could hear echoes, laughter, footsteps, a lullaby in a language she did not know but somehow understood. Down at the base of the tower, there was a door carved, not with a name, but with a symbol, the same symbol that had been etched unknowingly into the base of her violet bottle. She woke with her hand resting on her chest, heart slow, eyes soft. Hand, the rain had begun to fall, real rain. Wide, gentle drops falling like feathers from a sighing sky. She moved with purpose, her hands calm, her gaze quiet. Out to the ledge she set her bottles in a row, like old friends welcoming them back to the world. The drops danced on clay, trickled into glass, each one a moment, a story, a thread of memory finding its way home. But the violet bottle she left indoors, where the candles still burned. Lotzi's story, she felt, was not ready to be shared, not yet. By morning, every bottle had been filled, all except the last, an old one cracked slightly near the rim. She held it gently, felt the flaw in the glass, but something told her not to leave it empty. so she uncorked the violet one, held it above the old bottle, and let a single half-drop slip into the crack. The old bottle hissed just softly, and the crack vanished. Then the wind died just. Stopped all at once. The air turned, still heavy, as if holding a breath that would never end. Anwan looked around the hills, the rooftops, the sky. Everything was still, even the trees, even the birds, and then she heard Ita whisper, not in the air, but in the bones of the earth, name not hers, but one she knew, though she had never heard it before as Silra. She whispered it aloud, and the ground beneath her feet warmed only slightly, like a memory returning after a long time away. She turned to her grandmother, who sat in the doorway, knitting. As always, though, her hands were stilled. "You hear that?" Anwan asked, but her grandmother simply smiled a soft smile, as if she'd heard it long ago and had only been waiting for Anwan to hear it too. The next day, Anwan took the violet bottle, wrapped it in a scarf, and placed it in a small satchel slung across her shoulder. Then, without a word, she began to walk. The villagers watched. Some nodded, some whispered, but no one stopped her. They had all known in one way or another that one day she would go. She walked the road that curled like ribbon through the hills, past the old well, past the stone where the traveling bard had once carved a song into the moss. She walked until the sun curved high, then low again, and then the stars came out, and when the moon was halfway across the sky, she found the tower just as it had appeared in her dream, tall, silent, gleaming like breath frozen in mid-earth. She stepped inside. The air was warm, scented with myrrh and pine, and the sound of dripping water echoed, as though the building itself wept gently in its sleep. In the center of the room a pedestal stood, not empty, but waiting. Anwan approached, took the violet bottle from her satchel, and placed it gently upon the pedestal. The moment it touched the surface, a soft light bloomed, not bright, not harsh, just enough to see the shadows step back, and then a voice, the same one from the dream, only now clear, kind, certain. "Thank you, Anwan, keeper of the last rain, bearer of the memory drop, daughter of the whispering sky." Anwan did not answer. She simply listened, because some names, some callings, are not meant to be responded to, only received. The tower began to shimmer, each wall glowing with light from inside, and the raindrops, thousands of them, encased in glass, began to sing, not in words, but in moments. Laughter, sorrow, wishes, loss, hope, and every drop she had ever bottled had been waiting for this. Their stories poured into the walls, into the air, into the wind that began to rise again, somewhere far away. Of course, dear friends, remembered come close how once more. Let the hush wrap around you like a soft woolen shawl. The hearth still crackles gently, the candle's flame sways in the breath of night, and your heartbeat moves slowly like the pages of a book turned by wind. We return now to the quiet dream of rain and the girl who remembered how to listen. The wind carried the songs of bottled stories across the hills, soft as lullabies, timeless as moonlight, and Anwan stood in the heart of it all, her hair rising gently in the breeze, her eyes closed, not in fear, but in reverence. The tower around her shimmered, its walls no longer solid, but layered with light and memory. Raindrop stories, drifting like mist, blending, becoming, belonging. A story was no longer something to be kept, it was something to be offered, and as the wind rose higher, so too did the sound, not loud, never loud, but deep, like the sigh of the earth itself when it finally remembers a name it had long forgotten. Outside, the clouds began to gather. They curled like sleeping animals, stretching, shifting, softening, and one by one the drops began to fall, not heavy, not wild, but slow, kind, patient. They touched rooftops like kisses. They rested on leaves like wishes, and in the village far below, people stepped out of their homes, faces tilted skyward, hands outstretched. Pulled Marta, still holding a cloth of dough, felt a drop touch her wrist, and she laughed. A sound not heard in her home for many years. Ulrich, the woodcutter, sat down on the old stump beside his firewood stack, and let the rain fall into his cup of tea. He did not sip it, he simply held it, letting the steam curl into the story that had come to find a man in every home, every corner of the valley. The rain whispered something ancient not in words, but in presence. Sit told them they were not forgotten. The tower. Anwen opened her eyes. The bottle, her violet bottle, now glowed with a soft inner light, its single drop gone in its place a bloom of silver mist. Like breath on glass, she lifted it gently, cradled it in her palms, and the pedestal beneath it faded there. Was no need for it any more, for stories now belonged to the sky again, to the air, to the earth beneath softening stone. She turned, left the tower not as someone who had completed something, but as someone who had begun again. The path home was different. Though her feet knew it still, the hills hummed, the trees leaned closer, and every step she took carried the weight of silence. Transformed, when she returned to her village, no one asked her where she had gone. They saw it in her eyes, in the calm way she moved, in the quiet way she listened, as though every sound, every small moment held something sacred. She placed the violet bottle above the hearth, where the flame touched it gently each night, and it gave off a faint warmth, even when the coals burned low. Children came to her now, not with questions, but with quiet. They would sit in the doorway, hands folded, eyes softened. She would tell them what the rain had said, not stories of kings or battles, but of a girl brushing her sister's hair, of a boy who left bread for a stray dog each morning, of a letter buried beneath a sycamore tree that was never meant to be found. Mall. Things, gentle things, the kind the world forgets. To Isilient, someone remember sand. Sometimes on nights when the sissy air held that particular stillness, the villagers would gather, all of them, old and young. They would sit beneath the night sky, wrapped in blankets, wrapped in each other, and one would uncork a single bottle. Just one. Che would pour the drop into a shallow clay dish, hold it to the light, and let the memory rise. Sometimes it would make them laugh, sometimes it would make them weep. Sometimes they would not understand it at all, but they always felt it. And when the story faded, they would sit a little closer, hold each other a little longer, speak a little softer, because they had remembered what it meant to listen. The bottles still lined the ledge behind her house. Though she rarely filled them, Norraine came more often, as if it had grown fond of the valley again, as if it had decided to stay. Anwen kept the bottles just the same, cleaned them, wrapped them, whispered to them, because memory is a gentle thing. It must be tended like a garden or a flame. Sometimes she would walk to the top of the hill, bottle in hand, and sit there watching the clouds drift by, not waiting, just being. And when a drop fell, she would catch it, smile, and say, "Welcome home." Then she would carry it back, add it to the others, and later, perhaps, when the wind was just right, she would share it with someone whose heart had grown quiet enough to hear, because stories, real stories, the kind that stay, are not meant to be told once and forgotten. They are meant to return in raindrops, in lullabies, in the hush of night. So sleep now softly, gently. Let the wind tell you something beautiful. Let the rain carry your dreams, like glass-bottled memories, across the hills, into the stars. You are not forgotten. You are part of the story. You always will. We all will be.